Now you have a photograph too? At the end, what we'll do is have you hold it up in front of you, or frame photographs.
I just have that's the only one.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
That's
at
fine.
the end, if you hold it up in front of you, Wayne will focus in on it, and
Okay.
you can tell where and when it was taken.
Okay.
We're rolling.
Okay. This is an interview at the Buffalo and Erie County Historical Society, Buffalo, New York, the 26th of October, 2006, approximately 9 p.m., 9 a.m. Interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
John Fedyszyn. Date of birth is June 14, 1949. Born in Dunkirk, New York.
Okay, what was your educational background prior to entering service?
I graduated from Industrial High School, which is a vocational high school located in Dunkirk, New York.
Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Why?
I enlisted because I wanted to be Marine and I wanted to actually help the people of South Vietnam. And then after attending boot camp, then I was interested in saving Marines. So I just cared about the people.
Okay. Why did you select the Marine Corps?
I selected the Marine Corps because it was the best at the time. It was just the best. It is the best.
Okay. Where did you go for your basic?
Parris Island, South Carolina. Left Buffalo on my graduation day. Took the train out of Buffalo to Parris Island, South Carolina.
Is this the first time you were ever away from home?
Very first time.
How'd you feel?
I was excited, and then it was a different world. When I got to, we were taking a train in South Carolina, and I witnessed my first chain gang. Prisoners working along the tracks, and it was a different part of the country. It was just another world. It was just another world.
How long were you at Parris Island?
We were at Parris Island for a little over 8 weeks. They had cut it short. As a matter of fact, I went in on a 6-year enlistment, and the day before my graduation, the recruiter had called me and said, "You're going tomorrow." And I says, "No." I said, I'm on a delayed program till September. He says, "No." He says, "They need Marines now, you're going tomorrow, but what I will do is I'll get you a 2-year enlistment, but you will go to Vietnam." So that started my journey there. When we got to boot camp, we were told that it was going to be cut short because they needed Marines in Nam as soon as they can get them there.
So you went in May of '67?
I got to boot camp, yeah, I enlisted in May, but I actually went to boot camp
Okay.
June 25th of 1967.
Did you get any additional training at all? Or?
Went through regular infantry training at Camp Lejeune, and then communication training at Pendleton. But as I stated, June 25th I was in Parris Island. December 17th I was calling in artillery out of a place called Alpha 3. From graduation to the DMZ, and I believe it was a little over 6, maybe 5 months.
Okay. Do you think, looking back at it, you were trained adequately?
Well, I was trained as a communications expert, and when I got to Camp Carroll, I had asked for the content, and the sergeant looked around, he says, there's no content here, there's no pulse. You're going to be a forward observer radio man. And I had thought to myself, knowing the guys in California, that radio school is 8 weeks long. So I had said to him, I said, "Oh good, I get to go to school for 8 weeks? He says, "No, you get to go to school now." I said, "How long, what's it going to take?" He said, "Probably about an hour." He said, "Here, training's an hour," and that's what it was. He went through the radio, and I was on my way.
Okay, now you went over as a replacement?
I went over as a replacement.
How did you flew over?
I left from Camp Pendleton. They took us to Oakland. From Oakland, we flew Continental Airlines. I believe we stopped at Wake Island to Okinawa. From Okinawa to Da Nang. From Da Nang by chopper to Camp Carroll.
What was it like when you first got off the plane in Da Nang?
When I first got off the plane in Da Nang, there were 12 of us communications guys, and the first thing we seen was the Stars and Stripes newspaper, and it was talking about the battle hills of Khe Sanh and Hill 881 North and South. And as we got in our group, the sergeant says, we're going to take you by pairs and drop you off at different locations. Whoever wants to stay here can stay. I want 2 guys to stay here, but as we go along the line, we're going to need 2 people at each place. So I looked at my buddy and I says, this was Da Nang. I says, looking at Da Nang, I said, no way am I staying here. This place is bad. So we had choppered out to a place called Dong Ha. And when we landed there, I said, Tommy, this place is worse. From Dong Ha, it went to Kalu, which was worse. Then it went to Camp Carroll, and I said, Tom, we're getting off here, because this is not good. The stop after Camp Carroll was down the road. We got a place called Rock Tower where the last 2 ended up. But that's how I ended up at Carroll. It was actually, you just decided which one you want to stop at.
Mm-hmm.
But as the chopper was going down the line, it was getting worse and worse. But Camp Carroll it was home.
Could you describe daily life there and just what it was like, your duties and so on?
Well, at Camp Carroll, basically it was a gun battery of 105 howitzers, and it had regular tents, maybe 10 tents, and 2 wooden buildings, little huts built by the Seabees. We would get incoming from the day one I got there. Probably within the first hour, we had incoming probably 10, 12 times a day. It was just a common thing. People there, when they came in, it was just nothing to get excited about. Rounds came out of a place called Dong Ha Mountain, they called it, and they were just harassment rounds.
Were they rocket or mortar?
Some were rockets, some were mortar. They would fire 1 at us, we'd fire probably 500 back. And that's the way it was for probably, I was only there for about 3 weeks before I actually got sent out. My duties were to work in what was called the FDC bunker. And what we did there is we received radio transmissions from forward observers in the field for fire missions. We would receive them, give them to the FDC officer, and then the fire mission was called out of Camp Carroll. It was continual duty, fire missions probably around the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned here you carried the radio.
I carried, my duties were to call in 105 artillery in support of grunt units or friendlies, or if we were getting into a firefight or an ambush. I was teamed up with an FO. He would be the guy that determined exactly where the rounds to come in. My job was to call them in and then adjust them as after they came in.
So did you have to do any of the plotting, or he did all the
At
plotting?
times I would do the adjusting if he got into let's say there were 3 or 4 things going on at once. Say we're getting overran, or say there was a firefight. We were in a firefight and our company was spread out and they were in a firefight. He would call in the mission, and every now and then he'd say just keep adjusting them as needed, which was add 50, drop 50, etc., etc. But the FO basically did the determination on where the round was going to come in, or the commanding officer would tell us what rounds, what missions he'd want. A lot of times before we go on patrol, we'd have predetermined grids that we'd call in before we walked into the area. It would be common to call in a fire mission, which was 1 gun, 1 round. 1 gun, 1 round would be 6 rounds of high explosives times 6. That'd be 36 rounds within a 3 or 4 minute period, depending on what we needed and what it was for. But that was just day-to-day work. And we were in what was called a free fire zone. So that made things a lot easier. We didn't have to worry about who we could fire at. Our main concern was where we were, or where our friendlies were. That was the bottom line. But if anybody had been in the free fire zone, there was never any questions as to taking them out. Now I myself could not, if I seen someone just call a fire mission, my FO could. If he's seen two guys with 2 NBA walking down or something, he could make a determination. But the radioman wouldn't unless the FO was gone. But it was a day-to-day thing. That's the way it was.
Was there ever any problems with short rounds, or?
We'd have some short rounds now and then, and it would it would be hard to determine if it was the wrong grid or if it was the wrong charge in a gun. Didn't see it quite a bit, but on occasion, yes, we did. Yeah, it just happens. It does happen. A lot of times in a fire, fire mission, as we were firing, they would be firing. So a lot of times you didn't determine, you'd hear the pops, you would know where ours are coming, come by the direction of the pops, and they would join in with us. So it would be hard to determine what round came where. It would be confusing because as they were dropping close to us, our CO would say, hey, cease fire, and we knew where ours were going, but we had to make sure. So it would be take an area 1 week, leave it, they would have the grid on it, we'd come back into it the next week and they knew exactly where to drop it. So only knowing the direction that the rounds were coming, because the rounds were coming out of Camp Carroll, they were coming out of the rock pile, they were coming out of Caisson, they were coming out of Geolin. Naval gunfire had its own sound, and then we had air. From air, you knew exactly where it was coming from. So I hope that answered that.
Yeah. What was it like the first time you encountered the enemy out in the field?
First time I've seen the enemy, it was at Camp Carroll the first day where rounds came in and the guy received shrapnel in his neck and it was red hot. That was the first time I experienced this. The very first time out of the wire was a 50 caliber. We ran into an ambush. And I was with this colored Marine, we just met, a good friend of mine. He took a round in the leg and it actually ripped his leg open. And I don't know how good this tape is going to be, but if you want the whole story, I'll tell you. I was just out of high school. Like I said, it was like December '67, and the rounds were zinging over our heads, and I had seen him get hit, and he seemed to be okay. The leg was ripped open, and I had said to him, I says, what do we do? And he says, just sit down and have a smoke and relax. I says, I don't smoke. He handed me a marijuana cigarette, and he says, you do now. And somehow it just seemed like everything just quieted down. And then the firefight ended, they medevaced him, and it was like, that's the way it's supposed to be. Everybody got up and just continued on like it was a stop. It was a stop. But that was my very first experience.
Do you know what happened to him?
Last I've seen of him, his leg actually ripped open. They medevaced him, and I don't know anymore. You never really... FO teams were sent with different units, and they were placed with a patrol or a company just to support them. At the end of that patrol or operation, they would go with another. There may have been, in each company, 6 FO teams. The way it was laid out where I was at, we were assigned to my company 3-3 out of Alpha 3. 2 FO teams from the battery. 1 FO team stayed with the commanding officers group. The other FO team, which the one I was on, went on patrol or point. The point FO team would be the first one out with the point. Had they hit an ambush or something, they would start calling in artillery to support the threats. At times, we were given certain targets to take out, knowing where we were going. We were going out for a specific thing. We were going out for known bunkers. We were going out for possible enemy weapons, known NBA, possibly various targets. Where the other FO team may stay back at Alpha 3 or Caisson with the CO and determine different fire missions that they may think the enemy through intelligence are. Going on a patrol, going on a company patrol where the CO does go out, that FO team stays in there and the other team goes with the point. So that's how the FO teams work. The younger FO team went on point, which I was. So.
Were your radios reliable?
Yes, I would say yes at the time. I call in a fire mission, and in most cases within a minute you'd have it. Very seldom would you see a PERC 25 go down. From my experience.
Now what do you mean by a 25?
That was a style of radio. So it was called a PRC 25 was the radio I had. And
Now, how heavy was that?
I'd say the whole thing, we were going about 40 pounds. I carried that, I carried 2 batteries, I carried 2 antennas, I carried 2 handsets, a 45, and probably 25 rounds, 45. That was it. And this picture was taken,
Well, why don't you hold it up?
that picture was taken out of a place called Camp Big John in the Quaviat River. It was an operation called Operation Rice. The other FO that was in our unit, this was, I believe his name was TJ McManus. It was so hot, he was junior to me, he couldn't carry the M16 because the handle was so hot. So I carried it. I had a 45 and I was carrying it. The FOs really didn't have to do a lot of firing themselves. Their main mission was to call in artillery. The 45 basically was if you were going to, if they were coming right at you, you would use it. But you carried a 45, and you carried a gas mask. Carried a gas mask, a flak jacket.
Did you ever have to use the gas mask?
Used a gas mask one time, and it was when our gas launcher guy took shrapnel, and our own gas was used on us. Only one time.
Do you wear a flak jacket all the time?
All the time. Or a flak jacket in Alpha 3, all the time. All the time. Never go without it. Never.
Now, was that a common problem that the guns became so hot from the heat that?
Yeah, because they would walk through Elephant Grass, you would walk through, it was just so hot. In June, July, I mean, the thing was just, you couldn't touch it.
We first just talked about something like that. Interesting. What was your camp life like when you weren't out on patrol?
FO teams, we had no, and I'm only speaking for my team, we had nobody telling us what to do. Our job was to be, if we were going on patrol at 0400, we were there, we went, we did our job, nobody messed with us, nobody said when you come in you're going to do this, you're going to say no. We just, sometimes we'd go on 2 or 3 day patrols and come back and sleep. Sometimes we would just do what we want, because we didn't know when we were going out again. So it wasn't like the other grunts that would come in after patrol and they'd have to sandbag. We were basically left alone. After contacting my CO years later, because there were many books written about our company, and the FO's job was an officer's job. My FO was an E4, and I was an E3. So we had the authority to there was nobody saying you can or you can't do this. One time we had got called to go to Dong Ha, my FO and myself, the 12th Marine Regiment. And we were called in and we were talking to, I believe was the executive officer. And he pointed out to us, he says, you know, these rounds are $175 a piece. And he says, you realize the cost of them? My FO had said to him, he says, are you telling us you don't want us to call them? He said, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We just wanted you to point out what they were. And then that was it. We walked out of there, and 25 minutes later, we're calling it 36 rounds times 3. It was, I don't know. If you looked at some of the combat action after reports of the batteries on the DMZ, we're averaging 30,000 rounds a month. 30,000, 35,000 high explosive rounds a month. That's one battery. That's 6 guns. So you're talking 5,000 or 5,000 per gun per month. Yeah, because a fire machine could go to 100 rounds on a patrol.
What's the longest time that you were out on a patrol?
The longest time, probably on one patrol, I think probably was like 12 or 15 days without stopping, without going anywhere. A lot of times you would move 1,000 yards a day, which is 10 football fields. It was a chess game we played on the DMZ. It would be our main goal was trying to catch the enemy coming in from the north. So we would do a lot of patrols. It'd be a 10-day operation and maybe go 5 miles. But it would be a zigzag type deal, stop here, wait for the night, hoping they would infiltrate from the north.
If you were out for 10 or 15 days, how were you resupplied?
Chopper would come in, the first thing would be ammo, second thing would be water, third would be food, and the fourth would be whatever. They would just drop off a water buffalo for water. They would drop off, or actually bags sometimes, but ammo came in first. The ammo was destroyed every day where I was at. They would, you would turn your ammo in at night and they would destroy it because they had so many problems with it out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is not Alpha 3 DMZ area. Back at the other places, I have no idea.
What kind of problems?
Jamming, weather, mud, laying in a rice paddy, and a firefight. Everything's all full of water. So a lot of times they'd bring in new ammo and you'd replace it with what you got. You would put it on a pile and they would just blow it up.
Would you get fresh magazines or just the ammo itself?
We would get fresh magazines. They would be magazines. Like I said, I carried a 45, so I wasn't in the ammo changing every day. But I would have batteries coming in every day when a chopper came in after with the ammo. They would always have extra headsets. They would always bring in maps, cigarettes, Coca-Cola, Falstaff, beer. And you would trade the beer, or the pot for the beer. A lot of guys that didn't drink, they would trade you 6 beers for 1 can of pop. Pretty good deal if you drank, but it was hot. It was lukewarm.
Yeah.
It was hot.
What did you think of the 45 as a weapon?
45 is a very inaccurate weapon. It's if you, I had a chance to use it one occasion, and well, I'll tell you, using it in a spot right away type deal, it's not very accurate. It's not very accurate. But it was better than carrying the AR-15 or the M16.
Did any of the other guys carry like AKs or any other type of weaponry?
The gunnies would carry sawed-off shotguns. You would see the snipers would carry, I believe they went back to like an M14. It wasn't the M16. And when the snipers, I know their ammo because we worked with, our unit stayed with the snipers, we stayed with the dogs, and we stayed with the Kit Carson Scouts, the NBA that turned friendly. That was our little group. We would all work together. But the snipers were carrying an M14, I think, back then because it was more accurate than the M16. Or that was the way they were trained.
How reliable were the Kit Carsons?
I had some pictures I should have brought. The Kit Carson Scouts were, some guys would get along with them and some guys just wouldn't trust them. They didn't say much, but you had to go by what they said. I didn't deal directly with them, but I was near them, but I never had the opportunity to get involved with anything. Some guys, I never seen any problem with the Marines and them, but I knew some guys just would not trust them. But they didn't trust, a lot of guys didn't trust anybody. Didn't trust anybody.
What were race relations like within your unit?
Back then they were good. They were very good. I believe, because I went from outfit to outfit, and I don't know where this tape's going or anything, but I believe that there were some people that didn't want to be there. That's the one. As far as me, my consideration towards race, going from different outfits, and you would talk to different guys, and a lot of guys would say, "Yeah, why are you here? Well, I wanted to help. I want to." then you would run into this group that would say, I hate it here, I want out of here, I hate it. Well, why are you here? Well, it was either jail or here. And what I had found out to this day, and I believe, and I could be totally wrong, that most of the guys in the 9th Marines were the guys that were put there because they had no choice. They had to either go to jail or they had trouble home with their wife or for some reason, because most of them guys in that outfit did not want to be there. And you could tell the difference when you went on at night. You could tell the professionalism, and not saying that the 9th Marines weren't professional, they just were a different group when you left the wire. Because once you leave that wire, everything changes. I believe that, I think the Marine Corps called them shitbirds, but I think they guys were put into one outfit and they were given the not so pleasant patrols or not so pleasant, the known patrols. Because we go out and patrol, we know that we're going out for a certain target, talking to the point and say, you know, up ahead there could be, well, how do you know? Well, it's intelligence, you get the intelligence, no one told us. And you say, wow, why would this guy know this? But they were not. That's just my opinion, and like I said, and then after I had come home, I had picked up this anti-war poster on the DMZ, and I went to the website, and I had read this whole website. Someday you may want. It's kind of interesting where where the NBA had told the blacks that, you know, we'll help you in a firefight. You know, we'll take care of you. But I've never noticed any minorities or blacks ever give up. They were always 100%. They fought just like everybody else.
Now, what poster is this that you're...
Well, this is the NLF. I don't know if you're familiar with that, National Liberation Front, which is Viet Cong, had dropped posters along the DMZ for us. And I had picked this one up back in '68, and the guy had published it on the website. It ended up somewhere in Washington. The regiment, I had turned into regiment, and anyways, it ended up there. And on this website, if you ever go to it, it tells about how they give rewards to anybody with information on the 101st Cavalry and why are you fighting this war, and you know, and I didn't really get into this website until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But it's amazing. Had people known of that before, it may give you a different attitude. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you found this particular poster?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I
Could you
found
hold it up?
Well, here's the story that this is the website that was at, but that was, I mean, it was a piece of paper. I mean, they were all over the DMZ, but I just happened at one time to pick this one up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that the actual one, or is
This
that
is the actual copy of it, but you guys I brought it for you guys to have it.
Okay.
Because it's
If
got,
you could hold that up again so Wayne could focus on that.
but I don't want to be tied to anti-war.
Well, okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
I
But it's
understand.
something you found, though.
Yeah, it's according to that,
Okay.
I picked it up, but I don't want to say, well, I was never anti-war.
Yeah, well, but
Okay.
it's something you found, though, out there.
But the NLF is the organization that,
Yeah, you won't be portrayed that way, believe me.
no, like I said, this was just one of the things that, but if you ever did go to that site and read it, it's quite a long website, and it's got 30 or 40 different things on the war. And I didn't realize that the NLF would be a Cong. The Viet Cong was just a coup, whatever, against the government.
Yeah.
But going back to your story, no, I've never seen where they were intentionally discriminated on or didn't want to fight. I think the more colored guys lost their life or were wounded than anybody.
Yeah.
It's just a sad sight. But everyone that I was with was 100%. But
Now, you mentioned in the form you filled out about an operation along the McNamara line of relocating a group of people.
yeah, in the '68, what they were doing is there was a couple villages that they had to get the people out. They had made, according to what I was told, a free fire zone from DMZ back 3 miles. Anybody that was in that zone, you could take out, no questions asked. No questions asked. No questions asked. As a matter of fact, if you seen something, you were to take it out. Well, the people that lived there had to be relocated back to a place called Camlo or Calu. And what the government did is they made different villages for the relocated people. Once they took the people there, some would want to go back to where they lived. They just went back. And as they were back there, we would have to go back knowing that they were families that were going back and get them out of there. Because one, they were in a free fire zone. Two, the NBA might take them out because they were relocated by us. And the problems that I ran across with is sometimes there'd be 20 or 30 in a group, and we put the kids on first. And if there were 8 kids and 15 grown-ups, the 8 kids went and just 2 grown-ups, and knowing that they may never see each other again, and just to look in their eyes, it was a sad thing. But it had to be done. But that was part of our job, is along with the end, just if there were families to try to get them out of there, it wasn't the place to be.
Now you mentioned here also, which we've had others talk about, Beehive rounds.
Okay, a Beehive round is a round, it's an artillery round that has arrows in it. They're little fishhook arrows. And the Beehive round is a round that you would use if you had many NBA in open, you were getting overran, it was like a last resort, very, it's not an instant death type deal. It rips people apart. We actually had to get regimental okay to call it in. But we had called in that round on a couple occasions, and a couple books written by different commanding officers. They had talked about the Beehive round, and in their books they stated they had to have the okay of the president, but we never had the okay, we just regimental okay. It did take a while to get the okay to call them in. But on some reports you could see where the Beehive round, and another one was a Firecracker round. It was a round that you just didn't call in like the high explosive.
How was that different than a
The Firecracker round was a round that had like 7 or 8 grenades in it. And as this round would come in, these grenades would come out, and then this first explosion would happen, and then all these other explosions would happen around it. You wouldn't use it to support our troops, our guys, because you don't know where these things are going. Basically, it's a round that you have no really control to control exactly what it's going to take out when it comes in. Where in a high explosive round, you got an idea of like, it's going to cover this area, it's going to throw shrapnel 89 yards, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. This other thing is, once it came in, it just went all over. It was called in, not a lot, but it was called in.
Could you describe and talk about your wounding?
My wounding was an Operation Rice. It was at a place called Wonder Beach.
What was that?
Wonder Beach was a village where the NBA, we were going in to get weapons that NBA were storing in the food, along with the food. But as we got there, the village was controlled by the NBA. And I just took a 60-round mortar in the middle of the night in a firefight.
When did this happen?
This was in May.
Okay.
May of 1968. The unit we were with was Delta 126. There's not a lot out there in Operation Rice. There's not a lot of, when you go into the history of the operations, and the military operations, it doesn't say very much. It probably was a cover-up type operation, because when I had, years later, I contacted my commanding officer, which I located. He didn't hear it, but it's on my combat operations page. And if you go to look for Operation Rice, it doesn't say a lot. It was assist Operation Rice. And there were a lot of civilians or friendlies killed on that night.
Now, how badly were you wounded?
I just got struck on the leg and I lost some hearing. I ended up on the Sanctuary, I believe, next day, USS Sanctuary.
Did you ever return, or?
Oh yeah, I returned about 10 days later. I went back to Dong Han, and from Dong Han I went to, right back out to Columbia River.
Right. Now, you did mention, I don't know if you want to get into your friend TJ McManus.
TJ McManus was a junior radioman to me. He was, believe it or not, younger than me. He was a well-liked kid. Loved the Marine Corps. Had special permission to join. And we were at a place called Jones's Creek, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines. And we were going in to relieve 19, and it was a routine patrol. And for some reason, TJ had walked off the main path, and he stepped on a mine and blew him apart. The only thing found was part of his license, and that's the day I had his weapon, part of his scalp, and just part of his handset. And we lost him, but since then I tried to locate his family, and there were 3 books written about TJ McManus' death. 2 are accurate and 1's a total fabrication. And they were all written by the people that were in that outfit. One was in a book called Your War, My War. Another one was DMZ Diaries. And another one was No Shining Armor. And on the wall, on the email 10 years ago, all I had typed down was, under his name, there was nothing. So I had typed down, I was with TJ the day he was killed. And I put my name down. So I get a call from some guy, and he says, you were with TJ McManus? I said, yes, I was. He says, would you mind talking to his mother? And I says, yeah, I've been trying to locate her. I says, he was from Mansfield, Ohio. And he goes, oh no, she lives in North Carolina now. And she's quite up there in age, and she would like to know about how TJ died. And I says, well, then they would tell him. And he goes, no, nothing. So I had made it a point to contact her, and when I walked in the house, I seen his picture, and she had says, did he suffer? And I says, no. I says, he was gone within 2 seconds. I says, don't you know? She says, well, as a matter of fact, she says, what had happened was 2 Marines come to my house and said that TJ was killed and they can't find his body. And she says, that's all I was ever told. Body, killed in action, body not found. And she says, I wrote the Marine Corps a couple times, I got no answer. She said, nothing until you had contacted me. And she was quite elderly, and it was just sad. That's how he was gone. It was, but like I said, reading these stories, even one of the guys that wrote one of the books said he had contacted TJ's mother, and then TJ's mother wrote him back, and she said, it's a total, why do people do this? And it was quite sad. It was quite sad. I think what we find out now is that the first 30 years after the war, everything was quiet. And then I think after the government declassifies a lot of this stuff, you get more and more out, and people are starting to realize what happened there. So that was it.
Which of the books was the inaccurate one?
Your War, My War, by Myers, his last name is. He was a clerk in the office at 12th Marines, Charlie 112 at Camp Carroll. And he must have got the reports, and he wrote a book. And he had him with him on a convoy getting attacked by NBA going out after him, which never happened. There's another sergeant that knew this guy, said they never even left Camp Carroll. Because Camp Carroll was the rear. It was, he said there was no incident or nothing, and this guy just wrote that he was with them. And the thing that caught the eye was that TJ got killed at June 5th. He claims that he wrote his mother, and in his book he goes in like June or July 2nd, he says, I got a letter back from TJ's mother. Well, that never happened. You wrote home and Nam in June. You would not get a reply for 7, 8 weeks easily. I mean, just the turnover wasn't that fast. But the report from the 3rd Marine says he was stepped on a landmine. I was with Benny Perez, my FO, when we lost the game. We could have sworn it was a 152 rocket coming in. But the report of the Mike 33 stated it was a mine. It was a mine. So I got to believe that he stepped on a mine. His incoming was common. It was there. It just was common. It wasn't like a bomb that came in and we stopped doing it. We just kept it on.
Are there any other things you want to add?
No, I at least, you know, people talk about the war net, and it was kept quiet for all these years, which is okay. It was okay to keep it quiet. We come back in the VFW and the old Veterans War War II, then didn't accept us as veterans because they figured it was a war that wasn't won, and you had trouble going to the VFW and that, and then you went back with your friends, and they thought of you as being different, and the older people thought of you as being different, and it was a different life. And then when you go to the VA hospital, they would say, the guys would say, don't talk about the war if you got any problems, because they'll take you upstairs and they'll drug you up and they'll put you in a straitjacket. You'll never find a job, you'll never see your wife. Just keep it quiet. And that's the way it was back then. You didn't talk about it. You talked about yourself, and then finally it just faded away.
Were you aware of the anti-war movement at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I come back and I didn't do a lot of research on the war until maybe 10 years ago, and then I finally read where I was. And I was more scared after reading where we were and what happened, because I had thought that everybody was in it. And I'm not saying that the other guys weren't in it, that was, everybody was doing what we were doing. It was the same, the whole country. And the firefights and the medevacs and the fire missions was just done everywhere all the time. And but you read some of these books on Continent now and that, and they'll talk about how many troops were out there, and they were interviewing this North Vietnamese General Diop a few years back, and he was talking about Camp Carroll and Khe Sanh in December '67. They says, did you have 20,000 NVA around? He said, no, I had 70,000. You know, within 3 or 4 miles of us, but their orders were not to engage, but they were there. And it's just amazing.
When did you leave Vietnam?
I left there January '69. Left there January '69, came right back home, got to San Francisco Airport. My flight back to Buffalo, the first thing the girl said to me, sir, you got to take your uniform off. I said, what do you mean? That's good not to fly in a uniform because it causes so much trouble or so much dissent. If you take your uniform off, we can get you back to Buffalo on the next flight. If you want to fly in a uniform, you're going to have to take the red eye. which was like 9 hours later. And I said, "You gotta be kidding me." She says, "No." And I thought it was Continental Airlines at the time, and I'm thinking to myself, they're the ones that took me to Nam. And then the government sends me to Hong Kong, which was in China. And as we're going to Hong Kong, my buddy says, "Look at that. Them bastards we're getting hit with their mortars, Chinese-made mortars and rockets, and we're going there now." It was kind of weird. It was a different world back then. Then you come home, and the airlines that take you there says, "We don't want you flying in uniform." That was the only thing that was odd, you know.
Mm-hmm. Did you change your?
Yeah, you took it off, and I had a set of dress blues that are at the Dunkirk Historical Lighthouse. Wore one time. That's it. I've been worn since. But that was the way it was back then. It was you came home, and the war was you just didn't talk about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it.
Do you read much about Vietnam now?
I only read about things that happen on the DMZ. Because some of the stories I'll read about how wrong it was, and it's easy to say how wrong it was now, but the Kaysan, how McNamara knew before Kaysan was even, prior to December '67, had plans to move out of Kaysan because it had no value, and then you have to let the siege go on for 77 days. You read about that now, and you just gotta wonder, how did they operate? What was their intent, But they train you to be on offense, and most of the time you're on defense. You're trying to save your butt. You take a kill, and then you give it away. So why take it? But that was just part of the game.
Did you ever watch any of the movies?
I watched some movies. A lot of them, you start watching and you say, well, that's not the way I was. If any movies I could relate back to now, maybe a part of The Green Beret, I believe that can't remind me a lot of Kantian. But that movie showed Army, but maybe Platoon, parts of it would be how it actually was. How it was. There's no rules. No rules where I was at. No, there was this, you just didn't go crazy, get drunk and all that all the time, but there was no one shining your shoes or getting up for formation. And you had the authority. You had all kinds of authority. If you wanted to call in an airstrike off the Intrepid, you get someone. If you wanted 6 guns, 6 rounds of high explosive, you got it. If you wanted marking rounds, you got it. There was no one there that says, no, why? And then you come back here and then you get a job with the Red Barn or McDonald's or something, and you got like, what's going on here, 5 months ago I'm calling in high explosive rounds, and now it's a different world.
Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
I had went to some education just to use it, but not very much of it.
Join any veterans organizations at all?
I joined the BFW right when I got out. My dad was a big member there, so I had joined them, and that was about it.
Did you active at all, or even?
I help out at the museum in Dunkirk because my dad was an LST sailor. They have a small museum in Dunkirk. And other than that, that's it. The Vietnam vet really is starting to come out. They're starting to come out. It's a little bit late, maybe, but better late than never. They're starting to come out.
Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that was in service with you?
I have just one guy out in Seattle, Washington. But he actually never, since now, he never really worked with me, never did nothing. I would call him a couple years after, I'd say, where's Tommy? And his wife said, he's gone. I said, when's he come back? I don't know. What do you mean, I don't know? He's gone. How long's he been gone? About 4 weeks now. Where is he? I think he's up in the mountains. And you don't know when he's coming home? No, he'll come home when he wants to. And that's the way he was. The war got to him bad, real bad.
How do you think the war changed or had an effect on your life? Or your time in the service?
It's tough because what you did there, and then you have a family, and over there you did something and it was okay. Now if the kids do it, it's not okay. But for you to say you can't do it, it's weird, it's different. What is bad to me is bad going to a stop sign, is bad, I don't know, compared to, once you get that in your system, you can't get out of it, you can't get out of it, you can't get in and out of it. You did things there that you did, and now it's hard for you to really think that going to a stop sign is a bad thing. It's, and you just can't picture it. Or not doing this or having to do this, you do what has to be done. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times y'all do things and my wife will say, well, let it go. No, I'll do it till it's done. It's just that 1 year stayed with you forever. So I don't know, it's just me, it may not be. But as far as I did what I had to do, I'm proud of what I did, and we did do some good. We did save a lot of people. Whether they're still alive today, I don't know. But if there's any 40-year-old people around the DMZ right now, that's because of the 3rd Marine Division. Because women and children had zero value, none, absolutely nothing. They had no value on children and women. So that's all I can say.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sorry, I hope it.
No, that was